Math 1202 all about angles. In this unit, you're going to learn about different types of angles, such as acute, right reflex, and straight angles. You're going to try to measure them using a protractor and recognize some common angles. You'll have to draw some angles using a protractor. You'll then have to bisect angles, splitting them using a protractor or a paper folding or a mira or a compass. The most common ways we'll be doing it will be with a compass or a protractor. We're going to look at some angles that are in real life, like cutting in baseboards or woodworking or roof truss. After we're done with angles like that, we're going to look at lines that intersect each other or that cross over each other. We'll talk about parallel, perpendicular, and transversal lines. We'll then look at the angles that are formed between these lines, and we'll look at a bridge as an example. After that, we'll look at complementary versus supplementary angles, which are very simple. They're angles that add up to 90 or add up to 180 degrees, two angles put together. We'll look at adjacent angles, which is another way of saying angles that are next to each other. After that, we'll find missing values of certain angles when we're given one angle, and we'll learn tricks in order to figure out what the missing angle is. Corresponding vertically opposite and alternate interior or alternate exterior, and then interior and exterior angles. They will be all names that will be given to certain angles when lines are intersecting each other. We'll look at parallel lines. We'll look at how they're used in real life and to see if the lines are parallel. And of course, we'll look at things like a hockey rink and see if the lines are parallel, kind of like train tracks, they never meet. So let's start off with the first section, angles. So when we're looking at angles, all an angle is two lines that come together. Now they might intersect like this. Okay, they're both angles right there. There's four of them made by these two lines crossing. And then we might have parts of lines cross each other. See, they don't go on forever. So we got four angles formed by that one. And the last one here is made from two rays. In other words, two angles or two lines that are coming in and they join at one point. So they're all angles. There are four types of angles. You might have seen them back in grade 5 or 6 as well. We've got a right angle, and if I move this box, a right angle is like a corner. It's a perfect 90 degrees. Then we have an acute angle, and that is an angle that is less than a corner or less than 90 degrees. After that, we have an obtuse angle. That is an angle that is greater than 90 degrees. So anytime you take a perfect corner and you widen it up a bit, that would be an obtuse angle. I could take another one here for the last one, a straight angle. A straight angle is a one that is perfectly 180 degrees. In other words, we have widened it right up. Now, if I were to take a line here, let's say this line was like that. If I were to take it and move it so that it's even further, like that, that would be called a reflex angle. And I'll show you another example of that here. So I've got a perfect angle just like this. And if I take this one and I make it about there, that's about a right angle. If I move it like this, that's obtuse. If I move it perfectly straight, that's a straight angle. But if I keep going, now it's a reflex angle because it goes all the way from here to there. It's even wider than a 180 degree angle. The most common way to measure an angle is to use this little device called a protractor. Now, whenever we're given an angle, we have to look at a couple of things. First thing we got to look at is there's usually a couple of lines right there. And I'll see if I can get you a protractor from here. And if I take this lovely looking protractor right there. So here's another protractor, and you can see a lot of them come with almost like a bullseye. You see that going across there and across there, forms like a plus sign. That's the important part that you're going to have to line up. So I'm going to take this here and get rid of that one and use the one that you'll most typically see. Okay, so if I'm given an angle, any angle, and I could draw one something like this. If I want to know whether or not it's 90 degrees or more, I could simply just take a piece of paper and put it right here, or even a square. So if I were to take a square, I could take that square, anything with a corner, I could put it right on the corner, and obviously you can see this angle here is less than 90 degrees. So it's an acute angle. But if I want to measure it exactly, the first thing I have to do is line up this little plus sign right on the vertex or the corner of my angle. There we go. And after that, I have to make sure that this 0 right here, that 0 should be right on this line right here. So let's take it and rotate it so that it's right on the line. Perfect. So now we're starting with 0. So which do we use? Do we use the inside markings or the outside markings? And the answer is we use the one where the 0 starts, and in this case it's on the inside. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and then it's right in the middle between 60 and 70. So it's right here is 65 degrees. So I'll put down 65 degrees for that angle right here. So you can measure any angle, first of all, from using common sense. You know that if it's bigger than a perfect corner, it's going to be more than 90. If you know it's less than a perfect corner, then it's going to be less than 90. So you really can't go wrong measuring as long as you pay attention to which side you're using and a little bit of common sense. If I were to say this angle here, and I were to measure him now, if I put him lined up just like I showed you earlier, and I go straight across, okay, let's follow this line. Oh, look, this is about 35. And right away you'd know there's no way this is 35. I must have used the wrong measurement because it looks like it's more than 90 degrees to begin with. So it has to be more than 35. I used the wrong one, so I should still be using this one here. So 140, 150, so it's in between 140 and 150, so it's 145. So that's the easiest way to keep track of which way you're supposed to measure it. Whatever side your bottom of your angle is on, that's where you start with your 0. If it's on this side, you start with 0 on this side and count up. If it's on the other side, then you start with 0 on this side and count up. Okay, looking at this angle, it looks like it's more than a perfect corner, so it is a obtuse angle. This one here is a perfect straight angle, so it's a straight angle. It's a perfect line. This one here, if I were to rotate this box a little bit, I could simply put it nice and flat, and you can tell already that this is more than a perfect corner, so it's an obtuse angle. This one here, you can already tell if I rotate it, it looks like a perfect looking acute angle because it's not quite a square. It's smaller than a square corner. This one looks like a perfect corner or a right angle. This one again, maybe if you rotate your paper, you could see it a little bit better. Right there, you know already it's going to be less than a 90-degree angle because 90 degrees is like that. So it's going to be an acute angle. Sometimes you can look at different shapes and see if you got a square, you can see 4 right angles, as you can see. You could look at this one right here in this pentagon, and you can tell that these are 4 obtuse angles. That means they're all bigger than 90 degrees. in this triangle, in this case, they are all acute angles. So they're all less than 90 degrees in this triangle. In real life, you're going to see a lot of different angles. You'll see one right here is an acute. This one right here is obtuse. This one right here looks to me like it's possible. It could be, there we go, let's move it right there. It looks to me like it's obtuse. And sure enough, when we move it, that's what we get. This one, even though it's twisted a certain way, it looks like it's acute because it's not a perfect corner, so it's an acute angle. So let's measure a few of these. I'm going to take this one first. I know this one is more than 90 degrees. So if I were to take my protractor, I'm going to make them a little bigger. I'm going to take my protractor, line it up just perfect, and here's the 0, so I must use the 0 and start counting up. There's 90, there's 120, and this looks like it's about 125, just a little bit more than 125 degrees. For this one, you might want to rotate a little bit in order to get it just right, but if I rotate it up like that, I can see that this one is approximately, starting at 0, it's about 32 degrees. Okay, let's look at the next lesson. Oops. And the next lesson will be about, there we go. The next lesson will be about trying to draw angles. So now that we've got angles measured, we're going to try to draw a few of our own of a certain degree. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now I want to draw a 50-degree angle right here on this paper. Well, the first thing you always do when you draw an angle is just draw a bottom piece, something to start with. So I could do the same with this side too if I want. And the next step I'm going to have to do is get my protractor. So I'll get out a protractor and bring him over here like that. Now the same way you measured an angle is the same way you're going to draw one. So I'm going to put my plus sign of my protractor right on the beginning of my line. Make sure it's going straight across to the 0. Now I'm asked to draw a 50-degree angle. So I'll start at 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. There's 50 degrees right here, and I'm going to put a little tick right at 50 degrees. I'll move my protractor out of the way, and I'm going to get a ruler to connect this point right there to this line right there. Now with the use of a computer, I can draw a pretty straight line pretty easily. I just got to make sure it goes through my line that my dot that I just marked. And there it is. So this angle right here, I'm going to call it angle DEF. So I'll call this D, this E, and this F. Okay, usually the middle one here is where the point is. So the middle letter is the point, and the other one you put on the other side. So that is 50 degrees. So let's move down and do a bigger one. Let's do 120. So you do the exact same thing. So I take this and I draw my line again like I always did. And I'm going to move him over just a little bit. There. I'm going to take my protractor down, put it right on the starting point, and have it going straight across the 0. Now remember, I'm going up to 120. So I start 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120 is right there. So if I put a little tick right there at 120, I'll simply move him out of the way now, connect him up, and this angle now should be exactly 120 degrees. How do I name them? Well, we know the middle one goes right here, and we can put the L there and the N right there. So you do the same thing with every angle that you are given, and that's how you draw a proper angle. Okay, moving on to something a little bit harder. Not too bad, but a little bit harder. You need to pay attention for bisecting them. We're going to see how to draw and then bisect an angle. So let's start off right here. We knew how to draw an angle. That's something we were shown before. And I'll make it, there we go. So we know how to draw an angle. So I'm going to draw a nice angle of 80 degrees. So I'm going to go down, take my protractor, and I'm going to put it right on the corner. And there we go. Now I'm going to count 80 degrees. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 degrees is right there. Move the protractor out of the way and connect up perfectly there. So now this is 80 degrees from here to here. And of course we want to bisect or cut him in half. The easiest way to cut him in half is to measure your angle, which we already have it drawn. We know it's 80 degrees. What's 80 degrees divided by 2, or cut in half? And on the calculator, 80 divided by 2 will leave you with 40 degrees. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put our our protractor right on the line, and we're going to measure 40 degrees, which will be about there. So let's measure him. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. I'll put my little tick for 40 right there. Move this out of the way and connect like that. Now we have just bisected the angle. In other words, we've chopped it into two perfectly good 40-degree angles. So they are now bisected. So any angle you are given, all you have to do is bisect the angle by measuring it, and then you can easily tell how much you need to draw to cut it in half. The other way to bisect an angle is using a compass. And you've seen this little device here before. This is a compass. It opens up pretty wide and goes several different ways. Now the easiest way to bisect an angle using a compass like this involves just making 3 marks on an angle. So let's do it. Let's make one angle that's right here like this. There we go. So we've got an angle drawn right here. First thing I'm going to do is take my compass and move him and put it right, the pointy part right on the corner of my angle. So I dug it into the paper right there on the corner. The next thing I'm going to do, is take my compass and move him roughly about right there. It doesn't really matter how wide or how narrow. Just do it so it's pretty comfortable. So I'm just going to open it up to this amount. And now all I'm going to do is draw a perfect line going straight across and from one side to the other. So basically just making like an arc. And there it is. So now that I have that arc done, I'm going to move him over here. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is take my compass and move him right on where the arc intersects my line. So basically put him right on this corner right here. Okay. Now it doesn't really matter how much I open this up. I can open this up more, or I can just leave it the same. So if I open it up kind of like this, it's just going to mean I'm going to have to make my line longer. So if I keep them like this, that should be fine. I can just do that. Now the only thing I want to do now is draw a little tick. So I'm going to draw a little tick right here. That's about all you need to go through halfway. Now be very careful not to fool up your compass. It needs to stay the same distance for this line, and then dig it in right on the other arc. So I'll take it in and dig it in right there. Then I just go ahead and draw my line again. When I draw my line, you'll notice that you've just basically made a lovely looking, oops, you notice that you've made a lovely looking, almost like an X. Then all you have to do is join from right at the corner and make sure you go through perfectly through the middle like that. Now you have just bisected the angle, and you don't even know what the angle is. It could be probably about 50 degrees, but we don't know. So if you have this little device, a compass, it's very easy to bisect any angle. Okay. Let's try another one. Okay, so I'm going to put another angle here, and this time I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I don't really know what my angle is. That's okay. I don't need to. So now I'm going to take my compass, and remember the first step. You're always going to need to just make a perfect arch right across that. Just get some things out of the way. Okay. Now the first step is to just draw a line. I'm going to make mine a little smaller because I don't want it too big. And there I'm going to go ahead and draw my, there we go. There's my arc. So now that I've got my arc drawn, whoops, see daisy, don't want to move him out of the way. Maybe I better do him again. There we go. Oh, I've got my arc drawn. There. Now I'll move this out of the way. The next step is to take it and put it right on one of your arcs where it intersects your line. And then I'm just going to open him up a smidge. Let me see. That'll be plenty. So I'll open him up and then simply draw my right there like that. I probably should have done it even longer, but that's okay. Be very careful when you move the next thing because you do not want to change how wide apart your compass is. So now I've got to take it and move it right on the other side, right there where the arc meets the line. And then just draw again and see if they intersect each other. Zoop, and sure enough they do. Now I can move him out of the way and take a line and connect from here, right from there, and it's got to go through where the two of them intersected, so right there. Now I have just perfectly bisected this angle. So that works for just about any angle. There's always two steps. Number one, you've got to make an arc right here going across. Then the second step is to draw one from there, going across there, from there, going across there, and then you can just make a perfectly good line.